When it comes to discussion of Western RPGs, there's one game that weaves a very particular line between accessibility and complexity, and has consequently ended up as one of the most discussed and analyzed games in the genre, a game called Fallout New Vegas. While this may be because of my lack of experience with the genre, I would call New Vegas the quintessential Western RPG, because while other examples of games from this genre may be better for die-hard fans, New Vegas marries all the most compelling stat-building progression systems and complex choice-driven narrative styles that Western RPGs are known for, with an open-world shooter style of moment-to-moment gameplay that is much more approachable for the average player compared to many other Western RPGs. While this choice could be seen as dumbing down the game for the lowest common denominator, this gameplay style does nothing to get in the way of what makes New Vegas exceptional. The Mojave Wasteland is a believable world, embroiled in a believable political situation, full of tough moral dilemmas that the game allows the player to influence and shift according to their whims. As vast role-playing possibilities intertwine with complex faction relations, a well-defined gameplay loop emerges that mixes standard shooter gameplay with compelling narrative situations that flexibly react to player choice, and classic RPG progression systems that keep the game consistently engaging. But as I alluded to before, New Vegas itself has been picked apart by so many others before me, and I don't have much to add to that discussion. What I would like to discuss, however, is the game's 4 main DLCs, which is a part of New Vegas that I feel gets less attention compared to the main game. The conflicts between the NCR, the Legion, Mr. House, and all the other smaller factions in the Mojave are mostly forgotten in these self-contained side stories, which come with their own conflicts between groups and individuals that carry with them some very interesting narrative situations even next to the base game. Honest Hearts details the conflict between the warmongering Whitelegs and the allied Sorrows and Dead Horses, culminating in the difficult choice of how to end that conflict. Do you have the Sorrows leave their homeland behind, left to the destructive force of the Whitelegs, or do you resort to bloodshed yourself? Old World Blues, while on the surface as a story that's played quite comedically, still tackles themes of both the incredible and horrific consequences of scientific progress, and how the human condition is shaped by that progress. Lonesome Road ties the expansions together with the base game, contextualizing every conflict present in the game with history through the character of Ulysses, ending with a final confrontation that stands out due to its unique spectacle and the intricately philosophical dialogue from Ulysses. But the expansion that I would like to get into detail on is Dead Money. Of the 4 main story expansions, Dead Money is the one with the most divisive reputation. Some people hate the linear nature of the story, the instant kill bomb callers, the annoying life-draining fog, or the increased frequency of game crashes compared to the rest of the game. But Dead Money is actually one of my favorite DLCs for games in general, up there with the aforementioned Old World Blues and Echoes of the Eye for Outer Wilds. I could spend my time defending the gameplay decisions made, as the DLC is meant to be something of a self-contained survival horror experience more so than a classic RPG experience. But what makes this DLC so interesting to me is its story, as is the case with the rest of New Vegas. Your character is brought to the preserved ruins of the Sierra Madre Casino, forced to perform a convoluted heist by the exiled leader of the Mojave's Brotherhood of Steel chapter, Father Elijah. He's been trying to stage this heist for a while by the time the player shows up, but the crews he assembled would consistently turn on each other in the hopes they could take the casino's riches for themselves, overrun by the human instinct of unquenchable greed.
It was insanity. They could have had it all. It was so close. And they kept turning on each other, again and again. Cracking the Sierra Madre was difficult, but cracking greed, that was more difficult. So the dead man switches within.
Elijah claims to have contained and controlled human nature by forcibly placing his crews in explosive collars linked to each other's lives, but this is totally incongruent with his own motivations to seek the casino's treasures. He doesn't seek the monetary bounty of the Sierra Madre, he rather wants control of the technology held within. Security holograms can wipe out groups of combatants with no possible defense. The vending machines can create practically whatever he needs for his new nation, while artificially ensuring compliance with whoever is left with his collars. Even though he has rationally tempered his own irrational sense of greed over the years, enough that he won't kill others that come to seek the treasure on sight, that greed is still what drives him to seek the vault and forcibly conscript others to do so. One of your crew members, Dean Domino, lived as a celebrity before the bombs fell in 2077, and had previously set up the owner of the Sierra Madre to dedicate the casino itself to an actress he was blackmailing with a drug scandal, which would allow him to take the fortune for himself. Even before the Sierra Madre would become a legend in the times after the Great War, it had an allure that anyone who came to its doors could change their fortunes and begin again. It's an allure so strong that Dean is still there after hundreds of years, still desperate to perform his heist in service of a personal vendetta as much as it is for the treasure that lies in the casino's vault. With your crew, you're able to open the casino's doors and eventually reach that vault. As a final reinforcement of that message, there are 37 gold bars that are valued at an incredible 10,000 caps, but they also weigh 35 pounds each. With a character perfectly built for this specific moment with the maximum carry capacity, you can take 10 without being over-encumbered. After dealing with Elijah, the vault begins to collapse, and you're only barely able to escape before your collar goes off due to radio interference, an escape you can only make while not encumbered by the gold. It's an incredibly smart leveraging of the game's character building systems to strengthen this theme that is already so well developed narratively. The fortune of the Sierra Madre sits right in front of you, and you have to let it all go.
But getting to it, that's not the hard part. It's letting go.
Well, that's what I would say if you couldn't so easily escape with every single gold bar in the vault. Elijah is supposed to activate these force fields if you ever get too close to this doorway, but there's a short period of time when he's opening the door to the vault proper, which places him in a different animation that prevents him from activating the force field. He also can't spot you through the game's normal stealth system during this time, so if you simply stand as close as you can get to the door and immediately start walking there as he interacts with the terminal, you can just barely make it in before his animation ends. From there is a short walk to the exit elevator that skips the entire escape sequence, and with enough patience or the long haul perk which lets you fast travel while over encumbered, you can pawn off your gold for the most expensive weapons and a practically infinite pile of ammo for the rest of the game. Video games, at their most basic level, are just like any other computer program. They execute lines of code, and if those lines of code do something that wasn't intended by those who wrote it, that's called a bug. In representing an intersection between the more traditional arts and fields of computer science, video games have an interesting history with bugs. While these mistakes are usually bad things in your average computer program, it's a little more complicated in games, but for now I'll focus on that purely negative side. For this, you can look no further than the other games built using Bethesda's archaic mess of an engine. While in the modern day you can have a decently bug-free experience playing most of these games using mods, attempting to play them totally vanilla will be an experience marred by constant crashes, strange NPC AI issues, and if you're really unlucky, maybe even broken quests. At worst, you can lose entire saves and hours of playtime to certain issues. An infamous bug in Oblivion known as the A-bomb caused saves with hundreds of hours of playtime to become unusable, as every animation would be slowed to the point that the invisible open door animation would take hours to complete, and at that point the game might as well unavoidably crash on loading that save because your progress is completely halted. But even next to all of those, the tiny animation bug that allows you to plunder the Sierra Madre for all it's worth is, in my opinion, the most frustrating bug I've ever come across in any game, specifically from the perspective of how it affects the game's design. The concept behind this moment is fantastic, a unique blend of narrative and ludonarrative to illuminate this story's message further. You can't take it all with you, because the hardest part isn't getting to the vault, it's letting go. Instead of communicating that through a simple cutscene, or solely through dialogue as the rest of the DLC does, it puts that irresistible treasure in front of you as a collection of items like anything else in the game, and it makes you leave it behind. A great twist on the usual hoarding of valuables that RPGs encourage. But it's so easily sidestepped by this incredibly simple bug, and that really unique story moment is suddenly ruined. This bug isn't even fixed in the comprehensive community patches for the game, because that fix for a bug that is so greatly beneficial to the player would be far too controversial to implement, so I expect this bug will remain for as long as people continue to play this game. While I can look past the botched implementation and greatly appreciate what the developers were aiming for here to some extent, I can't help but consider how much better that story could have been if this one little bug was fixed. And despite how much I enjoy Dead Money's story, it is undeniably brought down by this tiny oversight. But if you want to discuss bugs in video games, you can't just look at the negatives, because in an odd sense, there are certain bugs that can positively add to games in very specific ways. When it comes to the things I tend to write about, talking about competitive play in games doesn't come up very often, aside from the few times that I happen to achieve something notable in certain games. For discussion of multiplayer games, most people would immediately jump to esports, or multiplayer games played at a competitive level. While a few specific and decently relevant esports games have high-level play that is heavily influenced by bugs and other developer oversights, most of the relevant titles still receive developer support, allowing for major issues like this to be patched out before they can define the metagame. Instead, there's another type of competition in games that I prefer to focus on for this topic, that encompasses all single-player games, whether it be completing difficult challenge runs, competing for high scores in specific games, or the most popular and ubiquitous example, speedrunning, or competing for the fastest completion of a particular game. Speedrunning has become very popular over the past 10 or so years, thanks to the advent of streaming, huge charity events like Games Done Quick or ESA's Break the Record series, and especially the highly accessible YouTube content centered around speedrunning. It's very interesting to learn about the unique and sometimes very odd strategies players can use to go just a little faster, as well as the stories that emerge from the competition at top levels. And speedrunning as an activity can be very enjoyable in itself as a way to get more playtime and a sense of accomplishment out of many different games. While some single-player games are designed specifically around how it will play as a speedrun, these games require similar patches to the multiplayer games in order to maintain a level of fairness in competition, as well as to keep the intentional design of the speedrun itself intact, free of any bugs that might infringe on that design. But there are many games that can never or will never receive another patch to fix these bugs, and it's these games that are incredibly interesting in this context, because those bugs can oftentimes be exploited to go faster on top of opening the door for even more inventive challenge runs. The way that speedruns of games like Ocarina of Time or Half-Life 2 have developed make use of many different bugs and oversights to achieve the best possible times, to the point where the vast majority of the intended progression is bypassed. And it's this type of bug that you might see as a bizarre paradoxical positive for these games, to the point that some developers are aware of them and consciously decide not to fix them.
You were on the fence about whether we should fix these bugs, whether the speedrun community would like it if we fixed these bugs?
Yeah, we've been watching these for a couple of years. I guess not for a while, since I'm seeing a bunch of new stuff here, but we're keep asking ourselves, like, would they like us to fix some of these? Like, you know,
to make it more interesting?
Well, yeah, we like the idea of changing the meta, but we'd hate to do it in a way that just made them all mad. So, yeah, we didn't really make any decisions. Because in some cases here, like, there are bugs here we could fix that they use a lot.
Yeah, like the wall climbing with the physics.
In fitting with me going over what I find to be the worst bug in any game, I'd like to go over what I find to be the best bug, which comes from Spelunky HD. Spelunky HD is a game that has a very storied history when it comes to competitive play. It's easy to focus in on the speedrunning aspect of the game, with its wide array of advanced techniques that assist in movement, unique skills of sight reading the random levels, and the mesmerizing mastery of the volatile teleporter that makes Spelunky speedruns so enjoyable to watch. However, speedrunning is just one part of competitive Spelunky, though it is arguably its largest part. The other part is something I alluded to before as another way to play single-player games competitively, and that's playing for high scores. In Spelunky, you can pick up various pieces of gold and gems, which adds to what can be considered your score. In score runs, your time is irrelevant, and the only thing that matters is how much money you can accumulate. I've always been intrigued by score runs in Spelunky, ever since I came across the now 9-year-old former record of 3.1 million by Bananasaurus Rex. This particular run is notable even today because of what happened within the run's first few seconds.
Shocked at what just unfolded right there. Guys, I think I found something. Is this a good item?
For context, this item, the Plasma Cannon, has a 1 in 1,000 chance of dropping from a crate, and gives you essentially infinite explosives to break money out of walls with, which is a very important source of money over the run. You're normally supposed to get a guaranteed Plasma Cannon about halfway through the run in 3-4, but if you're exceedingly lucky, you can get it from a crate in 1-1. Then he gets a jetpack in the first shop of the run, which is the absolute perfect start to a score run, though it's so exceedingly rare that this sequence of events has never occurred in a world record run in the 9 years since this run took place. These incredible moments of pure luck, combined with strong skill requirements past those lucky moments, are what makes Spelunky compelling at casual and competitive levels alike. But even aside from that appeal this particular run has, score runs in general are full of unique strategies that you don't get to see in speedrunning, both because of the different goal and the irrelevance of time to the run. While I could take the time to exhaustively go over every one of these, I'll just quickly go over the most impactful strategy, which relates to the Ghost. The Ghost is an enemy that appears after 2 minutes and 30 seconds have passed in the majority of levels, constantly following the player at a fixed pace through level terrain. If you touch the Ghost under any circumstance, you will instantly die, and the Ghost cannot be killed under most circumstances. It's meant as a hurry-up mechanic that motivates players to get out of the level before you have to deal with another instant kill obstacle, but score runners are able to take full advantage of the Ghost because of the mechanic known as ghosting. When the Ghost moves over any freestanding gems, they are turned into diamonds. While these diamonds are fixed at a value of 5,000, they will always be valued higher than the gems that are consumed in their creation, in earlier levels by an average of about 4 times. This turns the Ghost from a feared obstacle that is better completely avoided in normal runs into a deadly dance partner when going for the highest possible score, establishing a very compelling high-risk, high-reward strategy that keeps score running engaging even hours into a world record run. But this is just the realm of mechanics intended by the developers. Spelunky may seem like a decently well-coded game on its surface, especially since most speedrun categories in the game haven't used major bugs to their advantage until very recently, but score runs are where the game's poorly implemented mechanics are fully exploited. When it comes to making more money, the most important bugs are the many types of dupes that are possible in the game. Calling it a dupe is a bit of a misnomer, as instead of physically creating more sources of money, it's more like you're tricking the game into counting pickups multiple times. To explain it with the simplest example, the pyramid dupe involves running into a gold pyramid and hitting it with the whip on the same frame you collect it. You collect the intact pyramid, but whipping the pyramid also creates 3 individual gold bars. The intact pyramid is supposed to be deleted when whipped, but this way you can collect both, doubling the received value. But the most impactful dupe bugs for getting world record scores are the hired hand dupe and the render dupe. To start with the former, hired hands act as additional players even if you're playing alone, which among other things means they can pick up money. If you precisely set up a crush trap, or throw your hired hand into a pile of money such that you collect the money on the same frame as your hired hand, you will double the money collected on that frame. Render duping is far too complicated to exhaustively go over here, so I'll link an explanation video in the description by a longtime Spelunky community member far more qualified to explain the bug than me. The simplified version is that the loop that handles what items will be deleted on a frame can be stopped early if you collect your money pickups on the same frame and the ratio of the pickups you're collecting against the total number of objects in the level is greater than 1 to 2. The code that counts the gold you collect on a frame doesn't directly guarantee those pickups will be deleted, so this tricks the game into collecting pickups without deleting them, allowing them to be picked up again on the next frame. Under unrealistically perfect conditions, where there are no objects other than the money you're collecting in the level, the render dupe will also double your yield, and combining the hired hand dupe will quadruple your yield. The modern Spelunky HD score running meta is an incredibly intricate accident, and it's an accident that will probably never happen again in any form for a few reasons. Firstly, because implementing score systems into games has fallen out of favor ever since home consoles began to dominate the industry over arcades. Properly implemented score systems placed within games with modernized design principles can be even better than the days of arcades thanks to online leaderboards, which has been proven by the Spelunky series and other games precisely designed around chasing high scores like Devil Daggers. But sadly, score systems like this will likely never reach the popularity they had in the days of arcades, despite how much it adds to competitive play. But then, even if a developer manages to capture the strengths of score running, and players are able to find exploits that can yield so much more score, like the dupes in Spelunky HD, will they allow that bug to go unfixed? After all, if you were to design a game with a very specific vision for competitive play, would you want simple coding errors to infringe on that vision? Spelunky 2 released in late 2020, about 8 years after the release of Spelunky HD on Xbox Live Arcade. This game had a much bigger team working on it compared to HD, so of course when the game released, any errors similar to those dupes were nowhere to be found. Trivial infinite score oversights still existed, but even those were patched from HD when they were found, so obviously they were patched in the sequel. But Spelunky 2 upped the complexity of score runs significantly through the changes to the Ghost, as the Ghost now splits into 4 smaller ghosts, each with unique movement patterns. The increased difficulty of playing around the Ghost makes that risk so much greater, also making the runs quicker and more dangerous by making ghosting even higher risk while offering greater reward to those who master a much more complex obstacle. Spelunky 2 is a game that has extremely intentional design in every area, a design that supports both casual and high-level competitive play at the same time while not conflicting with the other. But while Spelunky HD was originally just like that in how it was designed to be played competitively, it is now a game whose high-level play, at least when it comes to score running, is defined by the unintentional design that arises from bugs, and I think we're quite lucky to have that. Score running in Spelunky HD is deep and technical, requiring absolute knowledge and mastery over defective mechanics. Those defective mechanics make the practice and experience of score running fundamentally different compared to the game's watertight sequel. All of these factors combined lead to the conclusion that Spelunky HD's score run is lightning in a bottle that will likely never arise from another game ever again. And considering that mechanics like duping arise from bugs that would never be implemented intentionally, we can't say that bugs in video games are always bad, especially when they can add so much depth to games for those who take the time to study, control, and master them.